It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
These are the final seconds.
The lead in the fourth. Can they hold on to it?
That do or die time. And everything rides on one shot. But it isn't going to be that easy.
And it's a one-point game.
This is down to the wire.
They're going to try the three-point attempt.
One shot to take you to the top. One winner. This is clutch basketball. That's the NBA playoffs. That's game.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, March 29th. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high-quality content that just has to say, it is so good to beat the Rangers. So good. And no hat tricks.
Listen, I'm just excited to be talking about a win.
Very true. So if you are like us, make sure you are following us on Twitter at Locked On Flyers to keep up to date on all the Flyers and Phantoms news, as well as get all of our episodes. We promote them every day. You can also email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. We are your hosts. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Rachel.
And today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your next order. So today, Rachel, we are going to be talking about a win. The Flyers won against the Rangers on Saturday. We will, of course, preview tonight's matchup against the Sabres and wrap up with our nemesis of the week. Locked On Flyers is available wherever you are currently listening. So if you aren't subscribed, make sure you do so you can get all of our episodes here on the Locked On Sports Network. We release 5 episodes a week, so you don't want to miss any news. All right, like we always do, let's get into some pregame notes and then talk about Saturday's game. There weren't too much of shakeups for Saturday's game. It was said that the Flyers were looking to avoid their longest losing streak under Alain Vigneault. They have not lost more than 4 games in a row under Vigneault to this point, which, I mean, he's only been the coach for like 1.5 seasons, so that's not too long of a stat, but the Flyers definitely needed a win on Saturday.
Absolutely.
So no changes in the lineup. AV continued to go with the same roster or the same lineup. And so first line was JVR with Couturier and Konechny, Drew with Hayes and Farabee, Lindblom with Patrick and Voracek, and Raffl with Lawton and NAK. On defense, we saw Provorov with Braun together. We saw Sanheim and Myers and Gostisbehere and Morin. I thought that the Flyers played a pretty good game. I mean, I felt like, and a lot of people have been saying this, but when you watch the game, you have to come out and say the Flyers were the better team throughout the whole game.
They were. And, you know, when we talked about the previous game, we said that, you know, statistically and numbers-wise, it looked good. It just, like, that's not what the scoreboard said, based on some, you know, very specific kinds of breakdowns and special team play and stuff. And this game had similar kinds of numbers to that, but they were on the right side of it because they cleaned up some of those things that led to the lopsided score the last time around. You know, specifically defensively, I think was the most obvious aspect of the game. I think also maybe the Rangers just were slightly less lucky and their passing was a little less crisp, I thought, overall. But that being said, much better results this time around.
Absolutely. And you talk about the defensive play. I mean, we've been harping on it all season long, it feels like. But like you said, they were much better. I mean, they were out shooting the Rangers, or they outshot the Rangers 37-25. They outchanced the Rangers 50-33. And they had an overall like full 60-minute Corsi 4 percentage of 60%, which is very positive. And the best part is that they doubled the Rangers on high danger chances, which was something that we really weren't seeing even if the Flyers were outscoring or out shooting their opponent. They were allowing their opponent to get better quality chances against them. And they were able to double up on the Rangers. I mean, they still let them get 3, but of course that's going to happen, especially when Zibanejad is on the ice for the Rangers. So overall, you know, I'm very happy. I'm happy with their performance.
Yeah, talking about those high danger chances, I was a little concerned early going because if you kind of looked at the heat map of their shots, they were all from pretty far out. And, of course, like a shot from near the point wound up winning the game for them, so I'm not going to complain too much. But that being said, when most of your shots are from the perimeter, your chances of winning the game are lower. But because they played so much better defensively and were able to do the work in front of the net, I to help create better opportunities from those longer shots. It obviously worked out in the end, like I said, but I think if they can strike a slightly better balance of these shot choices and create different looks, they'll only get better from here.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that's really good, a really good critique, right? That's something that we've seen. The Flyers are taking a little bit more point shots than we saw them last season, but sometimes they get lucky, and they did on Saturday. One thing that I thought was really positive was that after the power play goal that Zibanejad scored, they didn't fold, and I feel like that's something that we see a little bit more each time they play the Rangers. I mean, in the 9-0 game, we did not see that at all. But then in the 8-3 game, we saw it a little bit more, but obviously it didn't pan out. They still lost. But in Saturday's game, I thought little by little they still kept pushing, and they didn't let them get that second goal. Obviously, a lot of that had to do with goaltending as well, but I just thought overall everyone was kind of, I won't say on the same page defensively, but they were definitely in the same chapter, which is positive because before we didn't see that.
I noticed one thing in particular from my perspective that they were doing much better is having cleaner breakouts. Like in previous games, they were just getting trapped in the zone too much, and there was a couple times where I was worried about them this game, but I feel like it was much less often, and they were just able to have like cleaner breakout attempts, which getting out of the zone when defense is your problem is the first thing you want to do, right?
Exactly. So one thing I definitely wanted to mention was, the Flyers didn't score a ton of goals. They only scored 2, but those 2 scorers were depth scoring for the Flyers, which is always a nice thing to see. On the defense and then down in the lineup, Nolan Patrick, someone who definitely needed to get on the score sheet, and then Sam Morin, which we'll obviously go into a little bit later. But it was good to see those 2 guys score. Even better to see depth scoring for the Flyers.
Yeah, 2 first-round draft picks getting the goals. And, Patrick with a really good net front presence there, getting a redirect goal, it was so good to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I talked about goaltending. Definitely wanted to give a shout-out to Brian Elliott. I thought that, in the scheme of things and how goaltending is going so far this season, I thought he played good. I think when I look back on this performance overall, I would say he probably played average. But listen, he definitely helped this team get a win, and he stopped 24 of the 25 shots that he faced in this game, which, with the way the goaltending has been going so far this season, I am very happy about.
Yeah, I'll take that.
So don't want to be too negative on Saturday's game, but one thing that stood out negatively to me was just letting that 5-on-3 and that 5-on-4 go to waste. That was just a prime optimal time to take advantage, and especially on the 5-on-3, no surprise here, but it seemed like nobody wanted to shoot.
Yeah, that was part of the perimeter problem, right? They were just kind of passing around the perimeter. Now, I thought the Rangers were doing a pretty solid job on that penalty kill, so I can see why they were having trouble finding lanes, but sometimes you just kind of got to make your own lanes, and they weren't doing that.
I'm not one to give the Rangers credit, but I definitely I realistically understand where you're coming from, and I do agree to an extent. But like you said, I think sometimes the best way is just to get the puck on net and find different ways and get people out of position to try to see if anything can happen. Shesterkin was playing very well, so obviously you have to give him credit too. But that was just one thing I would have liked to see the Flyers take advantage there, even though they ended up overall getting a win. So speaking of getting a win, Rachel, we are almost down to the final 4 for the Built Bar bracket and their Built Bar madness. Now, if you don't know what we're talking about, honestly, you have to by now. Built Bar is such a great protein bar. They're the best tasting protein bar on the market, in my opinion. And I love that they somehow are able to make their bars low calorie, low sugar, high in protein, and high in fiber. So it tastes delicious and you're fuller longer throughout the day. And if you get any of their chocolate protein bars, it's made with 100% real chocolate, which you can't really say with a lot of the other bars out there. And so today's matchup, as we're going into the Final Four, is between caramel brownie and coconut brownie chunk. So I'm interested to see which one you're going to pick, Rachel.
Well, it's going to be caramel brownie. That's for sure. Caramel is one of my favorite flavors. It's my favorite ice cream topping. So got to go for that one.
I am in agreement with you. Caramel brownie to me is just so much better. I'm not a big coconut fan. So if I'm going with a brownie, I'm going caramel. If you guys agree with us or disagree with us, make sure you go to BuiltBar.com or to @bar_built on Twitter. You can use the code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your next order. That's LOCKED15 to get 15% off your next order at BuiltBar.com. And check back today to see who won the matchup and who will become the best tasting protein bar.
Radio.com is now Odyssey.
What is Odyssey? Odyssey is your new home for all the audio that matters to you.
All the music.
All the sports.
All the news.
And all the podcasts.
It's all live and on demand.
Inside the Odyssey app.
Whether it's audio that makes you move, think, or cheer.
It's all here.
Audacy. Odyssey.
Get all the sports news you need in under 20 minutes with Locked On Today podcast. Host Peter Bukowski updates you on the latest news in every major sport with the help of our local experts. Follow Locked On Today podcast wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Rachel, before we get into tonight's matchup, really want to wrap up Saturdays. I think the storyline of the night was Sam Moran, but especially the Gostisbehere-Moran pairing, because I think overall they both played very well together and played very well overall in the game. And even if you take out the goal that Moran scored.
Yeah, I thought so too. And when I talked earlier about having cleaner breakouts, I think the Ghost Moran pairing were part of that they just kind of simplified their game overall and just played really well together as a pair. And I think that helped kind of boost their overall performance during the game. And yeah, I mean, again, the Sam Moran discourse is a little bit much for me, but he played a solid third pairing defenseman game. And I will give him credit for that because he has not been at that place before. But it has also only been 2 games where I feel like you've been able to say that. So I want to see more games from him before I say, yeah, he's okay,
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I feel like Sam Moran is just always going to cause discourse in Flyers land just because there's a lot of things people like about him. And then there's a lot of people who are just a little bit more skeptical and just thinking, it's been 3 years. I want to see more from him. We haven't seen a lot. I agree with your sentiments that I'm just happy he played well in this one game. That's what my focus is on about it. I'm not long-terming this to think oh my God, he's going to be paired with Provorov. That's just not where I'm at on the whole situation. People who have listened know I kind of went on a rant before just about him being moved from forward to defense. So that's where my passion is, not about him specifically. But I was really happy for him. And when he scored that goal, it seems like everyone was just relieved. I think a lot of the fan base was shocked, but just overall relief and happiness on the player's face. I mean, obviously he's a guy that everyone roots for, everyone loves and wants to see do well. So it was really good for him, just storyline wise of the night, besides the Flyers being able to beat the Rangers. And so in the post game, Sam obviously met with the media and he said that, he was a bit lost at wing, but he obviously tried his best. No surprise here, he feels more comfortable at D, and he knows that's where he's best off. Said that Chuck Fletcher sat him down and told him that he's a defenseman now. He'll play defense for the rest of the year. And I think that was just a little icing on the cake for him and for me as someone who wanted to see him on defense the whole time. But overall, I just thought that was such a great storyline that we couldn't have moved on without it.
Absolutely. And, I think that it is very possible to be extremely happy for someone and to recognize what they've been through and appreciate a moment like this without putting too much pressure on him panning out overall.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think that's a really nice way to end and move on to the Sabres game, unless you have anything else about Saturday night's game.
Nope. Let's talk about those Sabres, shall we?
Oh, man. I don't want to jinx the Flyers. That's the mood I'm in, because let's take a look at
There's
the
so many reasons why that could happen, but let's
Exactly.
continue.
Exactly. So the Sabres' current record overall is 6-23-4. We're going to look a little bit past their 10 games. Right now, they're on a 17 straight winless streak. And today's matchup against the Flyers, they can even pass the longest, I believe, the longest winless streak if the Flyers beat them tonight. So it just seems like we're coming in this as a trap game. The Flyers beating the guys that trounced them in the last two games to go on to a team that they should beat, and the Sabres just say no. That's very possible. So looking at how these teams played against each other overall so far this season, the Flyers are 5-1 versus the Sabres. And in the last game, they took it to a shootout. That was on March 9th, and the Flyers won 5-4 in a shootout win. A very good game from Couturier and the captain, Claude Giroux. Both came up big. And then, if you remember, the Nolan Patrick shootout goal, which had that awesome picture where Patrick's skating around and then Gritty's right behind him, with kind of a terrified face, but extremely happy, which I feel like is Gritty's face anyway. So yeah, that was a game. Surprised it went to a shootout, which is making me a little bit nervous now. But yeah, overall, the Flyers have matched up pretty well against the Sabres. And since the last time we saw the Sabres, they have fired their coach, Ralph Kruger. He is no longer the coach. And they traded Eric Stahl to Montreal. And fun fact, Eric Stahl had to waive his no-move clause because Montreal was on that list to get out of Buffalo, because I don't think this season was what he expected necessarily, which I think that's what we all expected, the Sabres to be like this.
Yeah, and the Taylor Hall trade rumors are heating up again about now. So this is definitely a team of sellers, and they're pretty discombobulated at the moment. And with this streak going the way it is, they're finding ways to lose games. Their most recent game against the Bruins, I thought for about half a second they had a shot, but then did not. So I was keeping an eye on it because I kind of wanted the Bruins to lose that game so that the Flyers wouldn't have the bad luck of having this record winless streak approaching. So, yeah, I there was a hot second where I thought we would be in the clear on that front, but alas, no. So I'm a little nervous coming into it just because of all that and because the Flyers have been playing inconsistently. But given how the most recent Flyers game went, I'm hoping that that's enough to keep them from just breaking down defensively again or allowing bad goals, and, just fingers crossed they can put it all together.
Yeah, and you brought up a really good point. I mean, I was on the Locked On NHL podcast for today's episode. Sarah asked me, based on the win from against the Rangers, do you think that the Flyers will, be able to put it together and win against the Sabres? And I was hesitant to say yes, because this just seems like such a trap game. And we've seen over and over again the Flyers put together a win and then followed up with a loss. And not necessarily that they played bad in that second game, but they just weren't able to come up with a win. And so, like I said in Saturday's game, I thought that one of the big reasons they did win was because they got really good goaltending. And, I don't know, as of right now, at the time of recording, we don't know who's going to start in net. I believe it should be Carter Hart. But it's just, I don't know. I'm just nervous to say, yes, I feel like they can win this game.
Again, a little nerve-wracking, but they have the pieces there to win against the Sabres. Literally every team in the NHL has the pieces to win a game against the Sabres. And if the Flyers can't do it, there are bigger problems than we even knew about.
Yeah, Definitely. And this game, it's important that these next two games against the Sabres, which we'll talk about a little bit, but it is really important. So, I don't know, Rachel, do you feel like you would put a bet on the Flyers winning against the Sabres? I don't know if I would.
I don't know either, but I have a feeling I know where I could place that bet.
Perfect setup. And yes, absolutely. If you want to bet on the Flyers tonight or any of the other NHL games that are going on tonight, the best place to do that is at BetOnline. They're the perfect place to go, and BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action.
There are so many sports going on right now. You know, March Madness is heating up both on the men's and the women's side. There's golf, there's soccer, so much stuff. BetOnline even covers awards, TV shows, and reality TV, which is great news for people like me who love reality competition shows like Survivor. You can get real-time updated odds and props on almost everything you can imagine.
BetOnline has you covered for all of the news, scores, and odds. It's the best way to place your bets, and it's free to sign up. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today. With the promo code LOCKEDON, you'll receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts.
These are the final seconds.
The lead in the fourth. Can they hold on to it?
That do or die time. And everything rides on one shot. But it isn't going to be that easy.
And it's a one-point game.
This is down to the wire.
They're going to try the three-point attempt.
One shot to take you to the top. One winner. This is clutch basketball. That's the NBA playoffs. That's game.
Get the upper hand in your fantasy league with daily fantasy hockey advice from Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Fantasy hockey expert Scott Cullen gives you the tips, insights, and analysis for season-long, dynasty, and DFS leagues. Subscribe to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast on radio.com app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Rachel, it is time to wrap up with our nemesis of the week. And for those of you who are newer to the podcast, our nemesis of the week is something that we identify like a who or what in hockey that is the nemesis for us or the Flyers for this upcoming week. Last week, Rachel, you were not going to be able to see the Flyers broadcast for 2 weeks due to the blackouts of course, the Flyers playing the Sabres, the Rangers, the Islanders. So checking in, how you doing? I know it's been tough.
Yeah. It was, especially tough seeing some Rangers broadcast when they were just kind of dunking on the Flyers the whole time over the blowout wins. So not enjoyable whatsoever. But yay, they're playing the Sabres now. So I can finally watch the Flyers broadcast.
Which is great. I love that for you. And I think this week it's going to be the nemesis is going to be just how important these next two games are versus the Sabres. Now, hear me out. I mean, it's 2 games against the Sabres. Does that really matter in the long run? But I think that depending on where the Flyers are in regards to just reaching that playoff bubble decides what Chuck's going to do. And I think if the Flyers aren't able to beat a team like the Sabres, then I think Chuck is going to hold pat and hold steady and just kind of write this season off, which, I mean, for some listeners, that might be the way that they want to go. But I also feel like, you can take a step back, but you don't want to take a step too far back. And I think there's moves that, while it may not pan out for this season, there are moves that can be made to help get them ready next season. So I just feel like with all of that in mind, these next 2 games against the Sabres are specifically important because after the Sabres, let's see who they play, Rachel. They play the Islanders, which, oh my gosh. And then they play Boston, and they play the Islanders in Boston for about a week and a half straight. And then they'll, have a game in between against Buffalo and then the Caps and the Penguins. So, these are all teams that are ahead of them in the playoff contention, and you need to be able to beat the teams that are below you.
Yeah, it's a really good week for the Flyers potentially here, because not only are they playing those Sabres for the next 2 games, which they really need to win, but miraculously, there are 2 days in between games this week, between the Wednesday game versus the Sabres and the Saturday game versus the Islanders, and which they have not had in weeks. So I think that this week is super important overall, not just because of the opportunities to get points against the Sabres, but also because they have a chance to regroup, to get some more practice time in, and hopefully that benefits them in the long run.
Absolutely. So this week is very important for the Flyers, which we knew there was going to be a week like this, but man, I wish we could have gone into it being like confident. As of right now, just fingers crossed, not trying to jinx anything with the Sabres. So with our Flyers fun thing, there should be no surprise. It's going to be Sam Morin's goal. I mean, that was probably one of the best things to happen this weekend for the Flyers, and just reliving it. A great goal, and then a great celebration of everyone just jumping on him as if he scored like the game-winning goal in like Game 7 to get them to the Stanley Cup final. Maybe not that exciting, but Ghost's face is just pure joy, which is always great to see.
I have not seen the guys on this team smile like that in so long. That was just the best part of it for me, where just the whole team was happy. And,
yes.
You know, the way things have been going, it was a necessary moment. And I'm glad Sam Morin could provide it.
Absolutely. And you brought up a really good point. I mean, the way that the season has been going for the Flyers, it's very fair for the players to think that they'll never get out of this slump. Nothing good will go their way. And Sam getting his first goal, his first NHL goal of his career, is a great way to just like knock those thoughts out of their heads. So it was such a great moment. So we hope that you are as happy as the guys were with that fun thing. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's show. We'll be back again tomorrow to recap tonight's game against the Sabres and then talk about the Phantoms, which they've been pretty exciting. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. We have a weekly mailbag, so now is the perfect time to send in your questions via Twitter at LockedOnFlyers or at LockedOnFlyers@gmail.com. I'm Danielle. You can find me on Twitter at Danielle_Nick. That's Danielle_NICC.
And I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
Thanks again for listening, and we will see you tomorrow.
Giannis doesn't let Milwaukee go gently into that good night. Here's what our local experts are locked on today. The Milwaukee Bucks blow out the Phoenix Suns in Game 3 of the NBA Finals on the back of a second consecutive 40-10 performance from Giannis Antetokounmpo. Final score 120-100. Today on Locked On Bucks, our local expert Kane Pittman discusses the growing legend of Giannis, Jrue Holiday's X-Factor performance, and Devin Booker's struggles. A lot of baseball to pay attention to. The MLB draft began on Sunday. Monday night, the MLB's All-Star ceremonies begin with the Home Run Derby. Get up to speed on everything by subscribing to the Locked On MLB podcast today. Back to the NBA Finals. Should the Phoenix Suns be worried? The answer is on the Locked On Today podcast. All the sports news you need in under 20 minutes. Follow Locked On today, wherever you get podcasts. Local experts on the biggest stories. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.